Değerli izleyiciler, birazdan Uzaktan Çalışma ve Eğitim, Working and Educating Remotely oturumuyla sizlerle birlikte olacağız.
Değerli Uluslararası Akademik Forum katılımcıları, bu güzel konserden sonra ve bu kadar anlamlı karikatür serisinden sonra şimdi Uluslararası Akademik Forum'un uluslararası bölümüne geldik. Az sonra konuşmasını izleyeceğimiz Profesör John DALY, Austin, Texas Üniversitesi McCombs İşletme Fakültesi İletişim Bölümünün tanınmış bir öğretim üyesidir. Ayrıca üniversitenin yönetici eğitim programlarında liderlik ve iletişim üzerine eğitimler vermektedir. Boğaziçi Üniversitesi ve Texas Üniversitesi işbirliğinde gerçekleştirdiğimiz ve Türk yöneticilerinin katıldığı Leading in a Global World başlıklı yönetici eğitiminde önde gelen eğitimcilerindendir. Hatta belki aramızda bu vesileyle katılmış olanlar şu anda kendisini tanıyarak izliyor olacaklar. Profesör John DALY konusunda kurumlara danışmanlık yapmakta, hatta Beyaz Saray'a uzun süre iletişim konusunda danışmanlık hizmeti vermiştir. Birçok akademik yayını bulunan profesörün yayınlarına Wall Street Journal'da, Washington Post'ta ve New York Times'da referans verilmiştir. Şimdi kendisinin 16 Nisan tarihinde gerçekleştirdiği Working Remotely başlıklı webinar videosunu izleyeceğiz. Covid-19 nedeniyle son aylarda evden ve uzaktan çalışma ortamındayız. Yoğun olarak yaşadığımız bu ortamda Profesör John DALY bizlere bazı ipuçları ve öneriler vermekte. Dear International Academic Forum participants, shortly we will be watching Professor John DALY's Talking About Working Remotely video. He is a graduate of Purdue University. He is a distinguished teaching professor of Department of Communication Studies at the University of Texas at Austin. He has published more than 100 articles and chapters in scholarly publications, and he has completed 10 books. Dr. DALY's interests focus on practical ways of improving the communication skills of individuals and the companies. He has also consulted with numerous organizations, both public and private, on communication issues. In recent years, he has also worked with the White House on issues related to customer service and communication. He is one of the best professors of Executive Education Abroad program of Boğaziçi University that has been realized with the academic collaboration of Texas University at Austin. Now we will be watching his video.
Welcome everyone to this very short kind of unit on working dispersed. Look at the numbers right in front of you. I think most people would say 6 months ago, working from home, working dispersed would be really tough to do. In fact, it's not. Most of you are doing good or great. Only 2% of you say it's a bad experience, and no one says it's horrible. What we're going to try today is give you a few ideas about how to work even more effectively at home or from wherever you're working dispersed. Let's be clear, it is a huge thing that's been happening. In less than basically a month's time, we've gone from 31% of people work at home to almost 62%. It is probably the quickest changes in technology and organizations we've had probably in history. We've suddenly had to make this move. And here's the astonishing thing. How do you feel about working at home? How do you feel about working at home right now? Great, good, bad? You're mostly saying great and good. In fact, an interesting study came up just a couple of days ago. They asked people who currently work at home, would you like to continue working remotely or would you rather go back to the office? 59% of people said they'd rather the new model of work. Only 41% said they'd like to go back to the old model of work. So some big changes happening, and the question is, how do we actually cope with this big change over time? Let's first of all define what we mean by leading people from a distance. Years ago, we thought distance was defined by simply physical distance. That is, I'm working really close to you, I'm in Austin, you're in Austin, we're close compared to somebody working here from Austin and working in Houston. We discovered that was irrelevant. What mattered more was accessibility. The sense that you can actually get in touch with somebody when you need them immediately. That's a key thing for every leader. You don't have to be physically close to people, but you have to be perceived to be highly accessible. Now, when we look at it, there are a number of challenges you face as a leader. The first challenge is obviously maintaining your culture. A culture is what defines the organization, it's the air you breathe at work every day. Going to work helps that culture exist. At a distance, it's easy for the culture to fade away. People begin to think they work in an industry as opposed to a company. How do you do this? Manage your identity. Teach people they belong anyway. How do you teach people belonging? Talk about the company. Make sure people stay in touch. We'll talk more about this later. Give them swag from the company. It's interesting. You can give swag, t-shirts with the company's name on it, mouse pads. Even the screensaver ought to communicate the culture of the company. Anytime the screen goes blank, something about the culture should come up on the screen to keep reminding people who they're actually working with and for in the organization. But you still got to worry about performance. You still have to worry about performance. How do you get good performance at a distance from folks? One, be very clear what you want them to do. Goal clarity matters. Role specificity matters also. Each person needs to know not only what they're supposed to be doing, but what other people are doing to coordinate. You've also got to be able to find good outcomes for people. How will we know we've been successful on this project? Now, when you evaluate people, traditionally in the face-to-face office, you're looking at three things: the work products people produce, how they got that work done, and who they are as people. Are they good citizens, for example? At a distance, you don't have the latter two. So you need to be very cautious about simply identifying the product and forgetting about how hard somebody's working or the challenge they face as a person. One interesting finding: it is easier for people to work on modular tasks at a distance. That is, tasks that don't depend upon somebody else at the same time. If I'm trying to get something done, I got to depend upon person A and B getting their work done before I do my work. It's going to be a difficult thing. So the more you can modularize the work so each person can independently work by themselves on something, the more effective it could be. But you also got to keep reminding people why you're in business. Remember the customer in every case. In any crisis, people get more internally focused. Any change, people get more internally focused. You still got to remember why you're in business. Remind people consistently about the value of the customer, what they're producing in terms of for the customer, and why it all matters in terms of the company's future. What you then need to do is you need to move on beyond that. You need to motivate folks. You know, motivation is always a challenge in any work environment. At a distance, it becomes more of a challenge. Life needs punctuation marks. Weddings, anniversaries are punctuation marks. We need semicolons, periods, and new paragraphs. It's how we figure out where we are in our life and what's going on in our life. At a distance, you still need to have punctuation marks. Mini celebrations where people meet milestones. Zoom celebrations where people meet milestones. Design tasks that are motivation also. So figure out what motivates each person and let them try to do that more when they're, for example, working at a distance. Let people make their own decisions. You've got to delegate more. You cannot manage with the same intensity at a distance as you can manage face-to-face. But please don't give people false hope. Stop talking every day about when we go back to the normal work world. Who knows when we're going to go back? We may go back next month. We may not go back for 6 months' time. Don't make promises that you cannot keep. Now, when you're working at a distance, communication is absolutely critical. We've spent a lot of time studying how you communicate at a distance. First, and perhaps the most important thing at this point, is as a manager, as a leader, you got to get very patient with people's technology concerns. Some people don't have the right technology. Some people work on Chromebooks and they don't have the technology a major laptop would have. A very important thing, don't confound your judgment of people based upon their technology skills or technology availability. So people cannot control, and say, what's in the background of the room. They can't control, for example, when Wi-Fi goes off at some point. They can't control where they forget how to do something on WebEx. Oftentimes when people make these technological mistakes, we judge that as a personal mistake. It's not. Sometimes the technology just lets us down. There's also a learning curve that comes with technology. And people, even with experience for a long period of time, technology still make mistakes sometimes. They forget to mute sometimes in meetings. They forget to turn on the voice at some point. They don't think about the background behind them. They don't manage distractions very well. Yes, you probably should turn your doorbell off when you're working on a Zoom conference, a WebEx conference, or a phone conference. But people are going to forget that sometimes. So there's certain challenges also with any new technology, any established technology too, when you think about it. Email is established, but people always send too many copies to too many people, even nowadays. Audio visual, for example, texting, not texting, but face-to-face on the computer, for example, doing video audio conferencing. People interrupt each other. You got to take longer pauses in that case, don't you? When we get excited, we forget to pause, and as a consequence, we interrupt other people. Zoom measures who's talking based upon volume more than voice alone. So you got to understand, you got to speak loud enough for Zoom to recognize you're the person trying to talk at this point. But in the end, it's all about how you as a leader communicates. Stay focused. A really simple principle. Use multiple challenges. Use redundancy. If you send an email out to somebody, follow it up with a phone call if it's really important. If you have a phone call with somebody, follow up with an email. Documentation matters also. You got to keep documentation so people know what they've agreed to, what's been committed, what's been done. You got to keep schedules available for people to see what people are doing. We can't hold all that information in our mind. We've got to have documentation instead. You also got to manage rumors. Rumors happen a lot nowadays. There are massive rumors about everything tied to this virus. We know rumors are a function of 4 variables: the amount of anxiety a person has, the ambiguity of the environment, the credibility of people we hear the rumor from, and how important the issue is to us. The discovery made years ago is there's a multiplicative relationship among these 4. If any one of these goes to 0, rumors dissipate. Think about this. Which one, as a manager, as a leader, can you control? Ambiguity. You've got to be much more clear working at a distance than you've ever been before. Otherwise, rumors are going to happen. Also, please don't forget the small talk. Small talk is the mortar that holds a relationship together. It's the chit-chat sort of things. What you had for lunch, what you had for dinner, what's happening at home, what's happening in the office. You know, in the office environment, we're regularly talking and running to people with a water fountain in the restrooms in the cafeteria, and we're doing small talk. At a distance, we don't do it. But small talk matters. Think about it this way. I'm in an office with you. I walk in to visit with you the first thing in the morning. We talk about the weather. We talk about the traffic. If I call you on the phone, we probably talk a little bit about that, but not as much. On email, we don't talk about any of that stuff. You need to keep small talk going to make people feel they belong and to update one another about what's going on in their lives. You also got to show you care for people. You got to care about your people. Question: how do your people know you care? Let me give you a few pieces of advice. Number one, you got to be seen as incredibly accessible and incredibly approachable. Recommendation: have regularly scheduled office hours where you'll simply be available to talk to people if they want to call in, text in, IM, and whatever. Nothing else is happening, but I will talk to people in this 1-hour slot each day. Make sure you're approachable also. Get rid of the stuff that would distract you in your office. WebEx is oftentimes an extraordinarily good excuse to clean up your office. But nowadays, you've got to be approachable in every conversation. Understand people's need for connection. It's interesting. In the last week or two, I find myself doing something fascinating, even myself. I'm getting in touch with old friends and just checking in with them. I want to connect with them. Let people in the office connect with each other and surprise them in fun, spontaneous rewards. One piece of advice: create some care packages for people. We had a boss in the UT a couple of days ago, sent everyone tip treats, kind of gift cards. Nice thing to say, I care. Have fun virtual events. Have little events that people can just do virtually. A scavenger hunt on the web for websites, for example, you can find it interesting. If people want to give tours of the home, trust them. Their pets are important. Let them show their pets off. People like doing that. It's kind of a fun thing. If you do something new, let people know about you doing those things. You've also got to manage teamwork at a distance. And teamwork is difficult when you're not face-to-face. Couple of things to remember. In any team, trust matters. but respect matters just as much. One discovery: when you're on email, you're not as polite as you would be on face-to-face. You've got to be very careful what you say to people on email, even on a conference call. You got to say, if I wouldn't say this face-to-face with them, why am I saying it now? Let people have fun too. Goof off on Slack sometimes. Pass out a silly YouTube. Now you got to be careful. The YouTube's got to be clean and appropriate, those sorts of things. But let people have some fun with that. A really important thing for managers to do: market the work your team is doing. Interesting discovery. People we know who work far from us, we don't think they're working as hard as we are. So I'm in Austin. If I know some people working, for example, in San Antonio, I don't think they're working as hard as I am, because I know how hard I'm working, but I don't know how hard they're working. So one role of a leader is to market the work of people who are dispersed. Update people on your team what everyone else has done and how hard they're working, the struggles they're facing in terms of their work. You basically got to sell your team to every other team member on a period of time. You also got to market your team's work to your bosses. You got to celebrate what your team has done. You got to celebrate the people on your team to your bosses. Assign specific responsibilities so people know what they need to do. But please remember a very interesting discovery. At a distance, conflicts get magnified. Conflicts last longer. You've got to be a little more polite, a little bit more careful of each other when you're at a distance. People ruminate about things at a distance. Why did they say that in the email? How come they didn't look at me when we're having this call? You've got to actually understand that you got to be more careful about conflicts at a distance. If something potentially could be a conflict, clean it up, clear it up before anything bad happens. You also got to personalize your leadership. People got to know who you are and what's going on in your life. You're the leader. They want to know what's going on with you. They want to know how things are going with you. You got to do two things. Number one, you got to know your people well. You got to make sure they believe you know what's going on in their lives. Here's a nice little trick to do. Let's suppose you're managing somebody in San Antonio, somebody in Houston, somebody in Dallas, and somebody in Kansas City. You can go to Google and get news broadcasts in each of those cities. Google will send you update news from each of those cities each day if you want them to. That way you know a little bit of what's going on in the community. If San Antonio has something big happen, you'll know to be able to talk to that person in San Antonio about that concern or issue. If there's a big celebration in Kansas City, you'll know about that. And you can personalize your leadership by knowing those people, knowing those events rather. You need to also become good at storytelling. Stories define our culture. Stories define families. Stories define organizations. Stories define leaders. So you got to get better at telling stories about yourself, what's going on in your life. Years ago, when I first started studying dispersed teamwork, I was working with a very large corporation. I said, who's extraordinarily good at managing people from afar? They identified one guy. His name was Vinny. He was from New York. What can you say? I studied what Vinny did, and he did a number of interesting things. Every Friday afternoon, he'd send out a memo to everyone on his team worldwide. What was on the memo at the beginning was the updates about the business. Here are our numbers for the week. Here's what's going on about the business. Here's what's happening to our budget right now. He was amazingly open to people. I said, why are you open? If they're working face-to-face with me, they probably know this stuff. People at distance don't know this stuff as much, but they deserve and need to know this stuff. But at the bottom of every email, he included a little story about something that happened that week in his life. A debate about the color of braces his daughter was going to get. A new puppy who ate one of his wife's favorite books, kind of thing. About a little fender bender he had in a parking lot. I said to Vinny, why do you do that? Why do you send that stuff out? He says, my goal is when I visit another location or I'm on phone with someone in another location, they'll ask me about my daughter's braces. They'll ask how that puppy is doing. They'll ask me about how that fender bender was resolved. He's humanizing himself, connecting himself to other people in that process. You need to personalize what you're doing about yourself. But you also, as a leader, face personal challenges. Yes, you've got to do all these things to make your team more successful, but you need also to worry about yourself. You've got to establish some boundaries, for example. You know, the nice thing about being at work in an office is you close the door of the office one evening, you go in the elevator, go downstairs, get in your car, turn the radio on, drive home. You know work has stopped. Now you're going home to coach your kids in t-ball, you're going to have a dinner, you're going to watch some TV, and you know in the morning you'll get up, get in your car again, and go to work again. We have discovered at a distance it's harder to separate job from home life. It's hard to be effective at both. So normally maybe you would do a few emails at night if they're really essential. Now what happens? You keep the computer on your lap watching a Netflix event. What happens? You want to email people. You go to bed, but you check your email right before you go to bed. You wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning for some reason, you check your email again. Stop it. Do work when you're supposed to work, and make sure you have a life outside of work. Don't drive your kids crazy by always saying, I got to get this last email done before we can have dinner. Do dinner, you can do email later on or the next morning. Practical skills. And you've heard this, I suspect, on web broadcasts in the last couple of weeks anyway. But let's review some of the things we discovered. Go to work every morning. Dress up like you're going to work. It tells your brain you're doing something different. Yes, please wear pants when you go to work, even though no one's going to see you, except from the chest up. Have a checklist each day. Each morning, write down some things you want to accomplish and cross them off. It gives you a sense of progress. Have some routines that you know what's going to happen. Have lunch every day at the same time. Take breaks every day at the same time. Do the job you need to do at the beginning of the day or midday, whenever it's best for you. Routines give us a sense of security. Routines give us a sense of predictability. And it's better to have those, especially when other things are confusing. Take breaks and exercise. We have discovered that when people work at their home, they tend to sit longer than they do in the office. You know, in the office, you go to the restroom, you run to people in the hallway, you run down the road to another meeting. You can at least sit for 8 or 9 hours at home. That is not good for your health. That is not good for your health. Get up and take some breaks. Have a break every hour for 5-10 minutes. Walk around, do something else. Communicate to your family about how you need to work as well. It's okay to make a do not disturb sign if you can. It's okay to tell your kids you're going to be on a WebEx conference for the next 45 minutes. You need to turn the TV down or off. You got to communicate that. You may also want to have a tension marker. Some of us are not lucky enough to have separate office rooms in our home. So you need a signal to tell your partner, for example, please be quiet, please leave right now. One trick, for example, a friend of mine does, she's worked at home for the last couple of years. Anytime she has the word excitement or exciting, that's a signal to her partner to either leave the room or be quiet. So she's in a meeting and she says, an exciting thing just came to mind. That's the message to her partner. Everyone on the conference call has no idea why it might be exciting, but at least she's communicating without interrupting a call by saying, please be quiet to her partner. If you can, a view outside makes things better. Weather's nice. There's a sublime beauty that's happening in Texas and most of the country right now. We have blue skies, spring is afoot, and none of us were stuck at home. Look outside, treasure those views. Make sure your partner, your children understand their challenges. Make sure you understand your partner kids' challenges too. Your kid's going to school virtually. Your partner's trying to work at home at the same time. You're going to have to negotiate all such things you didn't have to negotiate before. If you can, don't work in the bedroom. You need to know the bedroom is where you sleep, is not necessarily where you work. Try not to work on your bed all day. Your brain's going to have a problem figuring out when you want to go to sleep. Bedrooms are for relaxation and rest. Try to find a different place to work. And finally, work hard to avoid the COVID-15. What is the COVID-15? If you went to college, you remember the freshman 15, the weight you gained freshman year? I suspect America is gaining the COVID-15. All right? Trust me, Wonder Bread is not good for you now. It wasn't good before. It's not good for you now either. Be careful what you're eating in that process. Welcome everyone to this very short kind of unit on working dispersed. Look at the numbers right in front of you.
Thanks ever to Professor John DALY. Please allow me to shortly summarize in Turkish the tips of Professor John DALY about working remotely. Bu arada bir önceki forumda konuşulan konuya da değinmek isterim. Gördüğünüz gibi videonun bir bölümünde işitme engelliler için de sağ köşede yayın vardı. Bütün video boyunca bunu yapabilseydik keşke. Profesör John DALY'e çok teşekkür ederiz. Çok güzel önerilerde bulundu. Birçok öneriyi ben not aldım. Paylaşmak isterim kısaca sizlerle. Önerilerin en önemlisi, bence bir slogan olarak belki de bunu benimsememiz gerekir. Uzaktan çalışma ortamında erişilebilir olmak önemli. Uzakta olmak değil, erişilebilir olmak önemli. Approachable kelimesini kullandı ki bence bu çok doğru ve çok düzgün bir öneriydi. Uzaktan çalışma ortamında şirket kültürünün devam ettirilmesinin önem kazandığını vurguladı. Mesela şirket logolu tişört giyilerek toplantıların yapılması ya da kullandığımız mouse'ların şirket logosuyla olması gibi şirkete bağlılığı arttırıcı, ortamı ısıtıcı etken olabilir diye önerdi. Motivasyonun bu ortamda daha da önem kazandığını vurguladı. Doğru, çünkü alışık olmadığımız bir ortamdayız. Stres var, gerginlik var. İletişimde belki sorunlar da yaşıyor olabiliriz dedi ve motivasyonun daha da önem kazandığını vurguladı. Yöneticilerin bu konuya dikkat etmesi gerektiğini vurguladı. Teknolojik yetkinliği olmayanları sabırlı ve yardımcı olunmasına değindi. Teknolojik bilgilendirme ve güncellemelerin şirket yönetimi tarafından sağlanmasını, özel olarak sağlanmasını vurguladı. Birçok iletişim kanalını birlikte kullanmayı önerdi. Mesela bir elektronik posta yolluyorsak aynı zamanda bu yolladığımız bilgiyi telefonla da paylaşmayı önerdi. Uzaktan çalışma ortamında dedikodunun normal çalışma ortamından daha fazla olabileceğini vurguladı ve buna dikkat etmemiz gerektiğini önerdi. Hatır sormanı ve sıcak samimi konuşmaları serpiştirmenin bu ortamda daha yararlı olacağını vurguladı. Uzaktan çalışma ortamında çelişkiler, çatışmalar, zıtlaşmalar daha fazla olabilir. Çünkü yüz yüze değiliz. Daha rahat bunlar ifade edilebilir. Uzun da sürebilir dedi bu çekişmeler. Onun için nazik olmaya ve seçilen kelimelere dikkat etmeyi önerdi bize. Uzaktan çalışma ortamında çalışma disiplini sağlanmasını önerdi. Çalışma şartlarının belirlenmesini önerdi. İşe gider gibi giyinmemizi, hatta pantolon görünmese bile pantolonu giymemizi önerdi. Sürekli oturduğumuz için sağlık açısından sorun olabilir diyerekten arada kalkıp egzersiz yapmamızı önerdi. İşe dur dememiz gerektiğini önerdi. 24 saat ev ortamında olduğumuz için 24 saat çalışmamız gerekmediğini, eğer yatıyorsak yatak odasına işleri götürmememiz gerektiğini, akşam yemeğini yiyorsak şu mailime, elektronik postama cevap vereyim diyerekten yemeği ertelememiz gerektiğini ve bir disiplin içerisinde bunlara dikkat etmemiz gerektiğini söyledi. Thanks ever John DALY. Bir sonraki konuğumuza geçmeden önce sizleri akademik ilişkiler komiteleri hakkında bilgilendirmek istiyorum. Global IAA'in, Institute of Internal Auditors'ın etkin komitelerinden biri olan Akademik İlişkiler Komitesi'nde 5 yıldır TİDE'yi temsilen, TİDE'nin Akademik İlişkiler Komitesi'ni temsilen üye olarak görev yapmaktayım. Bugüne kadar canlı olarak 8 kez toplandık. Onlarca kez bu Zoom meeting dediğimizi kullanarak çevrim içi toplandık. Çeşitli ülkelerin temsilcilerin üye olduğu bu komitede iç denetim mesleğinin gelişimi, yaygınlaşması için üniversitelerle işbirliği içinde çalışmalar yapmaktayız. Bir üniversite mensubu da olduğum için ve bir TİDE üyesi de olduğum için benim için çok keyifli bir görev oldu. Her toplantımızda TİDE'nin Akademik İlişkiler Komitesi'nin faaliyetlerini paylaşmam için gündemde yer verdiler. Bu talep bizden geldi. Hiçbir zaman reddetmediler ve her seferinde gündemde bize en az yarım saat, 1 saat yer verdiler ve faaliyetlerimizi orada sunumla birlikte paylaştım. Bu vesileyle bu fırsatı bize verdiği için eski başkanımız Roderick de Bruyne'a ve yeni başkanımız biraz sonra sizlerle konuşacak ve uzun yıllar komitede beraber çalıştığım meslektaşım Profesör Jared Sole'ye çok teşekkür ediyorum. Global komitede bu faaliyetleri sunduğum zaman en çok ilgilerini çeken Uluslararası Akademik Forum'un etkinliği oldu. Daha da ötesinde uluslararası enstitülerle işbirliğine girmemiz, yani bunu Selanik'te yapıyor olmamızdan da çok etkilendiler. Evet, yapamadık bu sene ama 2022'de planladık. Umarım bu hayalimizi de gerçekleştirebileceğiz. İlgilerini çeken bir başka etkinliğimiz, öğrencilerle olan yakın diyalogumuz, yakın iletişimimiz, özellikle öğrenci kulüpleriyle ilgili çalışmalarımızdan çok etkileniyorlar. Akademik makaleleri tarayarak özetlerini de paylaşmamız üyelerle çok ilgilerini çekti. Hatta kendileri de bu konuda IAA Global'ın sayfasında bir yorum yaptılar ve bizim sayfamızda paylaştılar. Diğer enstitülere örnek gösterdiler. Özellikle TİDE Akademik İlişkiler Komitesi tarafından yayın hayatına yeni giren Akademya adlı akademik dergi çok ilgilerini çekti ve diğer enstitülere örnek göstermek üzere bizi ne kadar takdir ettiklerini alkışlayarak ayağa kalktılar ve beni alkışlayarak, tabii benim varlığımda TİDE'yi alkışlayarak takdirlerini ilettiler. Bu vesileyle kendilerine çok teşekkür ediyorum. I would like to give some information about the Global and Local Academic Relations Committees before we move on to our next guest speaker. I represent Local Academic Relations Committee of IAA Turkey in the Global Academic Relations Committee as a committee member since year 2016. Since then, we have met alive 8 times and tens of times online. There are several representatives of institutes and chapters from North America and other countries, which makes about 15 to 20 individuals representing both academia and the practitioners. The mission of the committee is to forge relationship among academics, students, practitioners, administrators, and others for the primary purpose of promoting the role of internal auditing and internal auditing education within college university curriculum globally. In every live meeting we had, the committee chair has given me the occasion of sharing the activities of local academic relations committee with the members of the Global Academic Relations Committee members. So I take this opportunity to thank our previous chair, Roderick de Bruyn, and our new chair, Professor Jared Solo, for this occasion. Global Academic Relations Committee members have always been highly interested in our activities, namely the regular organization of international academic forums, the intense relation with the academia, the efforts for promoting the profession in the universities with the students, establishing relations with other institutes like Greece, and sharing the related and recent articles with the members of the institute. They are especially interested and they really appreciate the launching of academic journal called Academia.